Hey everybody, and welcome to my channel. My name is Kellman, and I'm here teaching you everything I know about jazz piano, modern jazz piano, neo-soul concepts, and so much more. So if you're new to the channel, please consider clicking subscribe and the little bell to turn on notifications so you don't miss any more videos just like this one. I hope you enjoyed my Oscar Peterson impression there at the beginning of the video. Obviously, I'm not Oscar, but that was the best I could do. I gave it my all. And in this video, what I'm actually gonna be doing is showing you a lot of what I was doing there. I'm actually gonna break down Oscar's playing into some really digestible tidbits of information that I think will really help you understand where he's coming from, how he strings together his lines, and how you can actually work on emulating that sound. Now, obviously, since I get a lot of these comments on these videos, I just wanna say right up front, I'm not saying that you should dedicate your life to sounding exactly like Oscar Peterson, obviously. What I'm saying is, we can learn a lot from studying the great pianists that came before us, and obviously I think pretty much any great pianist has actually put some time into studying their favorites. So this video is meant to just give you some information about how Oscar did what he did, and how you can actually start to integrate some of that into your own playing. Now be sure to stick around until the end of the video, because that's when I'm actually gonna take all the concepts we talk about and talk about integrating them into your playing. All right, let's get into it, but right before we do, if you could just smash that like button, I would appreciate it so much, because it really helps me move my videos up in the YouTube algorithm. All right guys, let's dive right into it. So before we get too deep into Oscar's lines and improvisation, I wanna just take a second to talk about his feel. So in my mind, Oscar is one of the most swinging pianists of all time. And if you just check out his album Night Train, it's just ridiculous how swinging that entire album is. And it's also really interesting because when I try to teach people how to have a good feel, how to have a good swing feel, it's one of the most challenging things that I think you can teach. Now, a really common mistake that I see students make is practicing their lines like this. So they're really accenting that, third triplet out of the triplet that makes up the swing feel, right? And realistically, that is not what makes a good swing feel. It's a common way for us to describe it, rhythmically in theoretical terms. But to me, what makes a good swing feel actually is that space kind of in between the eighth note and that triplet feel. But with that said, Oscar's feel for me is one of the greatest swing feels that does lean more toward the triplet, right? He has a very, very bouncy feel. Whereas some players have more of a straight feel, favoring the eighth note more. For example, someone like Keith Jarrett, for instance, although there are many examples. Other players, like Oscar, really do favor the bouncy triplet, right? I like to call it bouncy because for me, Oscar's feel is so light, you feel like you're constantly, literally bouncing over the beat, right? So just to illustrate that, here's a lick favoring the eighth note. So even though there are some triplets in the lick itself, I'm really heavily leaning into playing it a bit more straight. And part of what happens there is I end up actually making my line a little bit more legato. I'm holding the notes down longer. Now, Oscar probably would have played it a little bit more like this. So hopefully you can hear the difference there. In the second version, I'm actually playing the notes shorter and my fingers are almost literally bouncing off the keys faster. And you can actually hear the difference in terms of the feel. So just to summarize, Oscar's feel is very bouncy. It really favors that triplet as opposed to being straight ace. And therefore he releases the keys more quickly and keeps everything very, very light in terms of the swing. So for me, there are actually three main components that make up Oscar Peterson's lines. These are each different types of vocabulary. The first one is blues licks and riffs. So he has a lot of amazing blues vocabulary that he throws into his lines. The second category is bebop licks. So he has an incredible capability to just go through the changes, connecting lines in the bebop style. And finally, the third piece of the puzzle is arpeggiation. He has a lot of really amazing arpeggios under his fingers that he actually throws into his lines. Now, a lot of us may actually use these three different building blocks to create solos, and we might actually favor one or the other depending on the style of music we're playing. But in my opinion, and from what I have observed and heard in terms of Oscar's playing, what he does is he actually combines all three elements into a single line. So when he's playing these lines that go over the entire keyboard, he's literally just seamlessly flowing between blues licks, bebop lines, and arpeggios. So essentially, he kind of blends them all into his own very Oscar Peterson-y language. So here's something that I think Oscar would be very likely to do with this lick. He would go. So he's actually combining this bebop-y lick with this blues riff. Let me show you that again. He also might actually start a lick with a blues riff and then go into bebop. And then of course we have to blend in the third piece of the puzzle, arpeggiation. So far today we've been looking at a C blues, and of course at the end of that blues we have a 2-5-1 back to C7. So that means we're going to be looking at a D minor 7 to a G7 to a C7 here. So what he might be likely to do would be actually arpeggiate the D minor. What was I actually doing there? Literally, I'm just arpeggiating kind of the second inversion here, right? So A, B, F. And another key component here is making this arpeggio into triplets. 1, 2, 3, 4, da ga da da ga da da ga da, right? And then he would actually combine that with a line. So he might do. So we just combined an arpeggio with a bebop line. Now, just as a quick aside here, something that Oscar would do a lot is on the 5 chord, he would basically just play an octave of the root in his left hand. And he would usually do this having a little grace note at the top, right? So if G is our 5 chord here, he would do a little grace note from the F sharp to G, and then basically hold the top G and bounce the bottom G. So that's a fun little Oscarism there that I haven't really heard a lot of other people do. Now let's take a quick moment to talk about Oscar's harmony. So for me, there are a few important components, but really I think that the two main ones are these. First of all, I think Oscar had a really amazing handle on block chords. So if you don't know what block chords are, I've actually done several videos on those. I'll make sure to link it in the description and also put up a little info card on the screen as well. But long story short, block chords are, moving up the bebop scale with chords on every single note, and then being able to turn those into something you can use to arrange all of your improvisation or arrange melodies and lines, right? So Oscar did use block chords quite often, and he would actually integrate them into his two-handed chords here as well. So he might do things like. So really what I'm doing there to break that down is I'm playing some really basic left-hand pieces of voicings, maybe the 3 and 7 on a C7, right? And then my right hand is basically by itself playing a full block chord here, right? Even what my left hand would be doing, 1, 3, 5, 6, 1 again. And then I'm basically doing full block chords with just my right hand to, to actually arrange this melody. But we get this really interesting sound because the left hand is also simultaneously playing these chords. So if this was all of our C7, I'm basically just moving my left hand up and down in half steps. So that wasn't perfect, but I think it gives you a good idea. Now the second piece of the puzzle is essentially these right hand octave chords. So that means taking your left hand and playing the core of a voicing. So here over C7 I've got 3, flat 7, and 9, right? And then in my right hand I'm doing 1, 5, 1. And I like to call these octave chords. I'm sure there are some other names for them out there, but you can basically move your left hand chords around and then just play octaves in your right hand. You can throw in, some kind of a fifth or fourth interval in between. And you get that awesome sound that was used not just by Oscar, but others as well. Now, finally, that brings us to a very important subject. How did Oscar develop his solos? Now, for me, Oscar was deceivingly amazing at this. Sometimes he would just go off and just play lines for the whole solo, but at other times, he was extremely mature in his development. He would start with a really simple riff and build a solo based on that. So one thing I would encourage you to try is start with one simple blues riff and see if you can actually then slowly develop your solo all based on that single riff. So there's just a quick one chorus example of what I mean. Now, as promised, how do we actually integrate this stuff and work on it? Well, I have a few suggestions about how you can actually practice some of these techniques for sounding a bit more like Oscar. Number one, take a blues riff and then see if you can actually turn it into a bebop line. So start with the blues riff, get that under your fingers. So let's try this one. Okay? And if you dig learning blues riffs, I actually just last week released a video with some really interesting and modern blues riffs that you can add into your playing. But okay, so here we go. So now we have to take this blues riff and create a line from the end of this riff. So we're over C7, so we can go down, a C mixolydian scale. Right, and maybe a good place to land now would be on the 5, right? And then the 3. And then land on the 3 of F. So I just combined this blues lick with a bebop lick, which allowed us to hit chord tones on strong beats, the strong beats being 1 and 3, the chord tones being 1, 3, 5, and 7, until we landed on the 3 over F7. Okay, so that is one great way to practice this. Take a blues riff, try to go descending with a bebop lick. Also, take a blues riff, try to go then ascending with a bebop lick. So let's see if we can do that. Or, cool. Of course, another piece of the puzzle is those arpeggios. So let's see if we can do something here. So over C7 again. What arpeggio could we do over C7? Well, we could do a G minor arpeggio in second inversion, right? Then we get, 9, 5, and flat 7. All right, so we're gonna take an arpeggio, do it as triplets, and then combine it with a bebop lick. All right, cool. So those are some different options. Now, as you get a little more advanced with this, you can start doing combinations of all 3 of those different ideas. So you can say, all right, I'm gonna start with a blues lick, go into a bebop lick, and finish off with an arpeggio flourish. Or we could do something like that. We could also reverse the order. We could do an arpeggio first, and then we could do a bebop lick, and then finish with a blues riff, right? All right, everybody. Well, I hope you got some awesome tips and tricks about how to sound like Oscar Peterson and how his style can be broken down into some basic components to really understand what he's doing. Obviously, there's so much more to it, and I'm not gonna come out and say that I actually sound like him, But in the process of, making a video like this or even analyzing his playing, I've certainly learned a lot, and I encourage you to do the same. If you enjoyed this video and you're new to my channel, please hit subscribe and hit the little bell to turn on notifications so you never miss any more videos just like this one. And again, if you haven't already, please smash that like button to help me move this video up in the YouTube algorithm. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.